Well, hello, friends. We're all friends here. How's it going?
We're all roamers through this life.
That's right, roamers, which is still so weird for me to get used to saying. It is week 7 of the summer reading program. We are getting down to the end, aren't we? This
To
thing's ending
defeat the
soon.
Huns. We're getting down to business to defeat the Huns and earn
That's
that
right.
pizza.
That is right. We are talking about The Walking Dead today. I will say we're at least talking about Compendium 1. I don't actually know if Jessica started Compendium 2, but I sure didn't.
You're gonna find out in a few
I'm,
minutes. I'm not
I'm
gonna tell.
spoiling you right now. I didn't do it. So, hello, James, with the pizza.
Not a
So, yeah,
zombie, James. Interesting choice. Okay.
yeah, very
Right.
interesting
Right.
choice. We will be talking about this, but we have to, of course, first talk about our great sponsor. That's not a sponsor.
That's not a sponsor.
Our not sponsor. I think we're going to start with your slides because I'm so looking forward to seeing your slides.
Okay, we can't. I thought you were gonna splice them live on air
Oh,
discussion that we could have had
oh,
5 minutes ago.
oh no, no, no. I could. Yeah.
No, you don't have to. I was just gonna say, let's start with yours if they're not spliced, because mine ends with a tease for something for our finale show. So I want to save that for
Oh,
last.
well, we can go back and forth. I don't know why I didn't think that. We should do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm into that.
So who
Um,
are we not sponsored by today, Kristen?
we're not sponsored by 90s shows, of
90s
course.
TV. Let's go.
And I'm very excited for it. And we have prompts. We're talking about specific little things. For instance, what show we want to have one final season. And this is
In
yours. This is your slide.
this is this is me. This is us. Yeah. Yeah, so the prompt for this one was one final season and that season would happen right now. That was
Right.
important when I was doing the prompt. So
Right. Right.
listen,
Present day.
I have one reason and one reason only for picking Boy Meets World, as you can see from the tease that I
Yeah.
chose to include on the slide. Boy Meets World, I actually think had a really great ending. And for perspective, this is one of my favorite shows of all time. It means so much to
Same.
me. And the way that it ended for almost every character, I absolutely loved. When Feeney said class dismissed, I cried. I've watched that episode multiple times since then, and I still cry every single time. When that man leaves this earth, I will
Oh
be
yeah.
just not
Same.
consolable. I feel like he raised me, as I feel a lot of TV characters raised me. But yeah, I chose this for one reason only, which is just I, spoiler alert for Boy Meets World, was outraged that they just exited Angela in the most unceremonious way. I believe the third to last episode. No, I think it was second to last episode. And I just think those two were meant to be together. And I did watch Girl Meets World. We'd have
I
to
was
do
gonna
some
ask.
retconning for this.
I was gonna
I
ask.
yeah, I babysat, she wouldn't like me saying babysat because she was a teen, like preteen, but I took care of a young person in my life, of a family friend for a while, and she was very into Girl Meets World. And I did enjoy it, and I did like where most of the characters went, but it broke my heart when Sean came back, and that was not how the story ended with them together. So, all this to say, the only reason I want this to get one final season, besides the fact that like I love it so much, is just I need a plot where Angela and Sean do indeed get together for the rest of their lives. And that's all. That's all.
I have to say, and thank you, James, for saying it. I am glad you like Girl Meets World. Girl Meets World, I think, got such a
Yeah.
harsh feedback from original Boy Meets World fans, and I adored it. I adored Girl Meets World. I loved everybody coming back.
Yeah.
I thought it was so well done. The new cast was great too. Like, I really love this darn show. In fact, I want a final season for that show. They didn't get it, and I'm mad.
Oh, it's true.
But but I hear what you're saying. I still like that they brought Angela back. I liked what they did with, I mean, with Sean being there more permanently, it made sense for that show, right? But I hear what you're saying. I do, because she certainly did not get a great ending on Boy Meets World.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. I enjoyed Girl Meets World. For sure, I was very skeptical, but
I'm glad to
the
hear it
kid I was
though.
watching loved it, and I loved it
I
too.
love
And
it.
it was cool to share like the backstory of the characters, because I mean, they do a little bit of that throughout the show, but she always thought it was so cool that I knew about this ancient story. So
All the
anyway,
backstory with these people.
yep. So,
Love
anyways,
that.
what would I bring back for one more season in 2023? Boy Meets World. What
Love
about
that.
you, Kristen?
Well, so I will say, Reed made my slides. So I'm not sure exactly what they look like, think we started with that, but I'm not sure. Maybe
What
I
is
should bring these
happening?
up in a I know, isn't that it's not cute. It's not cute at all. Let me bring these up in another window to make sure that these are in an order that makes sense with what we're doing here.
Oh
How about
yeah,
that?
that's right. Hmm.
Sorry, hold on one second. Okay, nope. They're not in the right order. So let me, let me skip to 14. Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of slides here. There's a lot going
Whoa.
on. Yeah, there's a
Okay.
lot going on. Okay.
Woo. All right.
Okay. So you want to come back? Season president. Thanks for typing that out for me, Reed.
He just went with the first template he could see.
Yeah. Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place was the
Mm.
original name. Two Guys and a Girl was, of course, the name after. But I will say, I didn't watch this in the 90s. I watched this after the fact, and I loved it. Of course, you got Ryan Reynolds, you got Nathan Fillion, you got a great all-star cast, and the way this show ended, to this day, makes me upset
Ooh.
because there was such a big plot point, and they didn't get to come back and do it. And no spoilers. You should still watch it. I think it's great. We need that final season. We need it. And also, how great would it be to get Nathan Fillion to come back now, to Ryan Reynolds? That whole cast is great. It makes me sad. So that's the one. I was trying to think of what needed an ending that I
Closure.
really wanted, and that was the one. I need closure. Exactly.
Okay, I have a question. I've never seen this show. I do know the name. Two Guys, a Girl,
Mhm.
and a Pizza Place. Okay, but see, just with two guys and a girl, I am not great at math. But there are 3 men and 2 women on that
I knew you were
slide.
going to say that. Well, there's more
Who's
of
the
a
pizza
cast than
place?
the
Which one's the pizza place?
Ryan Reynolds and the guy who Nathan Fillion's touching it on the end there. They have the pizza place.
What a weird way of phrasing. We're doing great this morning. Great.
And the blonde girl. So they're the two guys and the girl.
Ryan Reynolds and the guy Nathan Fillion is touching. Mhm.
I can't think of his name.
Woo.
That's
Well,
it.
this would be rad. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Is it
should watch
streaming
it.
anywhere? Should I
I
watch?
don't
Yeah.
I don't know if it is. I know at the time when Reed and I watched it, we had to get the
Mhm.
DVDs from the library because it was
Oof.
not streaming anywhere. So I know it was rough.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want
It's a
that for
great
you
time.
too. I need to
Thank you.
know, like, even just to know who are these other actors. I need
And they're
another
great.
season. Yeah.
And they're great. They are.
Nope. You really can't watch it anywhere.
It's
DVDs from
too
the
bad.
library it is.
That's too bad. It's worth it still. All right. So
Hey,
of
Mary.
course,
Chaos,
90s
Mary.
show.
You walked
90s
into
show we
chaos.
went. Continued in comics. Hello, Mary.
Sorry. All right. I promise. Getting it together. Okay, so hear me out. I cheated on this one, but to be
Love it.
fair, I didn't complete the last prompt, so I'm just giving myself bonuses here. The one I would really want to see a comic of already has had one, Xena, Warrior Princess, of course. Now, the Xena comics that ran as the show was going, not the best. The Xena comics from right afterwards, kind of mid tier. The Vita Ayala short lived comic, top tier, god level. Ironic with the mythology here going on. But I would want like an ongoing series now, and I still want Vita to write it. And I feel like it's possible because all the rights are there and they're interested. But that felt like cheating because it has technically gotten a comic series when it was on and afterwards. So I was like, you know what? I want like a mystery comic, like a fun, cozy mystery comic. So I chose my namesake, Angela Lansbury, Jessica Fletcher, Murder She Wrote, because I thought I want a comic series where the truth comes out. Jessica Fletcher's always going to these places. Murders are happening. She's solving them. It's really sus. She goes all these places and always a murder occurs. Why? Who's the common denominator? Jessica Fletcher. So I want a continued series where we learn she, in fact, was the murderer all along.
Ooh, I love this.
No one would see it coming except for me, who's believed this since I was a small child. I was like, it's so weird. She keeps walking into murder. The other one that I really loved, and I actually think kids these days would like to read a comic about this, was Ghost Rider. Have you read this one or seen this
No,
one?
I don't. I'm not familiar. I don't think.
I feel like it wasn't as popular, but basically these kids who wrote for a newspaper, they went to a high school in New York City. I can't remember which like fictional high school they went to. They solved mysteries through a ghost that would type on the typewriter like the answer. So it's like ghostwriter. Like there was a ghost helping them solve the mysteries. And I think that would
Mm.
be really fun too. Because I like comics that, are kind of both telling a long form story and also are sort of episodic. And I feel like we don't have a lot of mystery ones these days. So this was
Nice.
my submission.
That is exciting. Real quick, get caught up on the chat. Did you finish the second compendium? I don't think Jessica's gonna tell us yet.
I'm not going to tell you that yet. But
I
yes,
didn't.
congrats to Spain, not to their terrible coach, who's been accused of a lot of things, but to the
Mm.
players. Well deserved and a very early morning for me.
James says, I would love to have Boy Meets World come back, but with everything going on with Ben Savage, I don't see that happening. Yeah, definitely not. It wouldn't
Listen,
happen.
honestly, with what I want to happen in the final season, he actually does not need to be in that last season. He could be
True.
like on a trip.
That's true.
I don't care.
That's true.
I don't care.
I don't care. When were you sponsored by Flashing Light Yo-Yos? Those were a good time.
Well, I won't spoil anything.
Hello, Freddie. It's the Incredifabulous Just Jessica.
Ooh.
It's very nice. Jessica Fletcher was either the murderer or she just had horrible luck.
Mary, you and I know the truth, and it's time America does too.
I love that. All right. Are we ready?
No.
Cat Dog.
Ooh.
Come on. So I loved Cat Dog. Love Cat Dog so much. Some of the Nickelodeon shows came back in great comics. Boom had an amazing run with Rocko's Modern Life. That was wonderful. Same with Rugrats. Great modern run there. And I think we would have such a cool run with Cat Dog too. I would continue to read. I think it would be great. I couldn't think of anything better. There we go. Also, because of course the one I would want to continue in comics already happened with Buffy, and it was well done. So
I was thinking about that. I was actually surprised when I was Googling like 90s shows just to get ideas like in my brain going. And when I got to this prompt, I was like, a shocking number of them have had comics continuations. And I'm only bringing this up because it made me think like we don't see that as often present day because I don't know if IP law is a lot more stringent, but like it was so common actually back in the day for Dynamite or some of these other publishers to pick series up like that, but you just don't see that happening now. And I don't know if that's the popularity of the medium or the IP laws, but I was surprised when I thought about it.
yeah, I agree. The only one I can think of right now that has a lot of comics would be like Stranger Things, but it's not like they're continuing it in comics. It's just kind of
Right.
here's some side stories, which is cool. But
Oh,
Freddie can answer it. Okay,
well, put some deets in the chat, Freddie, and we'll read it later on.
Ed, Ed, and Eddie was great.
Oh, it's a good choice, Elon.
Absolutely.
Well, here,
All right.
listen. This may seem ironic to people or like a lame pick. But I think my personal opinion is that X-Men, as if you were to pick between doing X-Men movies or X-Men TV show, the X-Men to me personally work better as a TV show. There, especially because the cast is so large, it doesn't make sense for a movie. And also because at its height of popularity, like Claremont popularity, there was a healthy dose of everyday life issues. They're just going to the mall. They're just going ice skating. And you just are not going to do that in a movie and have you build the family dynamic of this team. Also, there's so much intergenerational stuff in the X-Men, like this class, then that class, that you'd want something that could show that progression a bit more naturally. Now, you may say, Jessica, we've had other X-Men shows, and I've loved a few of them. I think, what was it called? The Gifted on Fox, was that one of them? Not too long ago. I thought it was pretty good. But I want this specific cast. And yeah, there's nothing more to say really. It was a basic pick, but when I really thought about it, I was like 100% this is what I want. Yeah.
I'm so with you. I would love this. Absolutely. Okay, we're being dramatic here.
With the PowerPoint.
I cheated a little bit. So
It's
Rocket
okay.
Power was not
Love.
originally in my thought process. But then Reed and I were talking about it, and he was like, "No, but it'd be great because it'd be like Brink coming back with
Yep.
some like Johnny Tsunami, and then you've got Rocket." And I'm like, you know what? That sounds amazing, actually. So I would love Rocket Power. I think it'd be so
Yes.
fun, as well as Doug. Now I don't know how you're gonna do Skeeter. He's blue. I don't know, but I would love it. I think it would be great. He can wear the same thing all the time. I love Doug, so I just think it'd be fun.
Yeah, Doug was on my potentials as well, actually. I just think it's such a fun slice of life show, and anyone that has an animal companion,
Oh,
live action or cartoon, I want to see your everyday adventures. But yeah, I could
100%.
see like some kind of really meta take on Doug where he does do the thing where he opens his closet and it's just all the same, but he pulls out one that's like long sleeve. You remember that part? It was so
Yeah.
funny. But I love Rocket Power too, and I would wanna if I did Rocket Power, and I agree with everything Reed said. I would add one twist because you were mentioning Stranger Things, and I do think, like, that
Mm.
format of, like, YA exploration, be it, like, a horror or just a mystery in general, I think that would be really cool to throw these characters into that setting for sure.
I 1,000% agree.
Oh, love Rocket Power, yeah.
Freddie says merchandising is rare for new IP. Networks don't want to make things if they will make little to some money. Would rather make no money. Strange, but yeah,
Mm.
they'd rather keep focusing on stuff that sells. I mean, makes sense.
Interesting, okay.
Johnny Bravo. It's a good one.
That would be so funny, though. Oh,
With the whole shapes.
the shapes, but I was also thinking, like, who would be the casting? I can never get this name right. Is it Dave Bautista that did Knock at the Cabin?
Oh.
Is
Well,
that
I
who
don't know
that
about
is?
that particularly.
I am so bad with actor names. Somebody let me
I
know if
didn't see
that's
that.
accurate. But that man has range, and I could see him pulling off some version of that.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be
Elon, tell
awesome.
us who your casting would be. I want to know.
Please. Okay.
Let's go. Did I do a modern recasting? I did not.
I love how this was your one question that we answered, and you're like, no. And I spent so much time on this,
I
Jessica.
Here's the thing. It was a busy weekend. I
That's
was in
interesting.
Louisville late. It was a
Hey,
really rough week, as we'll talk about when we get to the Walking Dead Compendium. I The fact that A Different World has not had a reboot is mind-boggling. Now, one has been tossed around a couple times, and if people don't know, this is a spinoff of The Cosby Show. Denise goes to Hillman College, which is an HBCU, and we quickly forget about the seasons Denise is in, and it becomes more about these other characters. But I feel like now is the time. I will say the spinoff of Blackish, Grownish is similar to
mm,
this. It's not an HBCU that I can recall, but it tries to recreate some of the dynamics, some of the topics that they talk about, especially the intersectionality of being like Black in a collegiate setting. But this show had so much heart. It had such memorable characters. The storylines today, I've rewatched it twice, like since watching it when I was a bit younger, and it like really holds up. There are very few, even like the kind of more lessons learned episodes, like the special episodes. They were very popular in the 90s, like a very special episode of this, like still really holds up. So I can't, if you've never seen A Different World, the first season's a little bit rough, as I mentioned, until they grow into themselves, but I would highly recommend it. It's so good. And part of why I had trouble casting, I did have a couple like ideas. Two reasons I struggled. This is a college show. And when I thought about actors, I was either thinking of people who were too young or too old.
mm,
Like it was really hard to get the in between enough where they all seemed like they would be roughly the same age. But the other thing is the actors on this show are so memorable in their roles that when I thought about a straight up like reboot, like with the same character types even, it was really hard to think of someone to play them because they just embodied their characters so strongly. So I may think of some and maybe I'll present them on our pizza show. I don't know. I don't know. I
okay.
had a couple of ideas, but I want to meditate on it. But yeah, this was just my little love letter to say it's wild. 2023 is certainly the time post writer strike to bring back A Different World. And if you have not watched this show, I just like cannot recommend it enough, especially like the end of season 2 forward. It's just so good. So I choose A
Where
Different
can we
World.
watch it?
It was on Hulu for a while. Let me see if it still
Okay.
is.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, so good. It is. Oh, it's on Max now.
Oh, nice.
I hate calling it that.
I was gonna say I don't like that you
There are
did.
6 seasons. Again, you can watch season 1, but honestly, just jump in with season 2. Marissa
Okay.
Tomei, though, if you're into hot Aunt May, is in season 1. Just FYI. She's fine.
Okay. So I thought long and hard about this.
Mm,
I found this to be incredibly difficult. Everything I thought of, I was like, no, no. Or it'd be like a lot of these shows from the 90s, of course, were kid shows to me. And I don't know young actors now.
mm.
Like, and then I just felt old, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I say that, and you're going to see some young actors. But here's the thing I took this question to mean if I
Mm.
was forced to recast a favorite 90s show, modern day,
Yeah,
what would
sure.
I do? So
Mhm.
if I'm forced to, I'm going to do it.
I didn't think you would touch this with a 10-foot pole. Because I thought about this too, and I was like, I won't do Buffy because, like, that's too precious to Kristen.
Here's the
I'm
thing.
ready. Everyone buckle in.
With the disclaimer, that's why I have so many slides. With the disclaimer, I could have kept going. But the disclaimer that I think the Buffy cast is perfect. I love the cast. I don't know that I would choose to recast anyone, right? But if I was forced to, and they're going to do a modern day thing anyway, let me do it,
All right.
right?
We're ready.
Listen, I'm not messing with it. I'm not. This isn't real. This is just in my mind. If I had
No
to,
one is listening to this. No one in Hollywood except for kind of
no one.
Freddie is
Also,
listening
this
to this.
yeah, this isn't going to happen. And everyone knows Buffy's my favorite show of all time. I adore the cast. I would not want to recast it, but I thought it'd be a fun exercise to see if I could.
I'm
Right?
ready. I'm excited about it actually.
Okay. So speaking of Girl Meets World,
Okay.
I'm recasting Buffy with Sabrina Carpenter.
I like this.
Okay, because I think she's a great actor. Right? She's a great actress. I love her music, and that's it. That's all I know. That's all I need. She's blonde. What do you want? What do you want from me?
When the
But
musical
also,
episode comes, she will be
she'll
ready.
kill it. Okay, she
She'll
will
be
kill
ready.
it. So there we go. I
I
think it'd
like
be great.
that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Willow. Do you love it?
I'm emotional.
Do you love it so much?
I love it too much.
Too much.
I want it to happen now. I'm gonna cry.
Honestly, this is the first one I thought of.
Yeah. Ugh,
I was like,
love.
absolutely, this is who I would cast as Willow. How great would
Mhm.
this be?
Yeah. Love
This
Liv
was the
Neeson.
easiest one for
Everyone
me.
watch Yellow Jackets.
Oh my gosh, please. And I almost just wanted to be like, okay, just take the whole Yellow Jackets cast and put them in Buffy. Like, they're all so good.
Yeah. I
And you
had
probably
that.
could.
Yes. Yes.
So this one was so easy, and I thought it was perfect. So
Yeah. I love that.
thank you. Thank you. All right, Xander, which Reed spelled wrong. Thanks, Reed. Xander with an X.
Who's this man?
Listen, Frankie Jonas, he is the fourth Jonas brother.
No. That's perfect for Xander, though.
Thank you. Thank you.
All
He's
you
the
had to
fourth
say was fourth Jonas. I don't even care what he looks like, what he acts like. Fourth Jonas is the energy Xander gives off.
Thank you. That's what I thought. He's also the quirky Jonas. So I was like, here, he got this. He got this. There it is. Also, kind of thought the look worked, right?
Yeah, no, totally. I love
All
it.
right.
You're so good at this.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
You say that right before this one.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
Listen,
I'm listening.
I just thought this would be funny. Oh, Reed's here. I realized I spelled Xander incorrectly as a bit to show you later and then forgot to change it.
Sure,
right.
Reed. Sure.
Got it. He's the talented Joe, but
Oh.
listen, I think they're all talented.
No, real talk is what is his name again? Joe?
Frankie,
No, Joe's the main guy, the older guy.
he's the middle.
Is he
brother.
actually an actor? Frankie
Um,
Jonas?
He acted when he was a kid at least, and
Okay.
now he's a host on Claim to Fame, so that's why you have to watch it. And he's
Wow.
a musician, of course.
He's ready for the musical episode.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Listen,
He's ready to slay it.
I just thought, is Mary just saying no? Is that what this means?
She's speechless.
We got the accent with Gordon Ramsay, right? We have
No
the
one can fake a
older
British accent.
no, we we have the older, like, pretty guy, right? Giles is pretty.
Okay.
And you know he would be a great watcher to a Slayer, right? Because he'd be like, "Get your stuff together."
He would. He'd be throwing
Excuse me,
pans.
Mary. What do you
She's
mean?
saying on it. She loves it.
I just couldn't cast Giles, and I thought this one was really funny. So
Yeah, that is
that's
really
where we
funny
went.
though.
Thank
It's
you.
unique.
Thank you.
I'll take it.
Yeah, you know.
Hmm.
All right. Now
Oh.
Cordelia is going to be Olivia Rodrigo, and here's why. One, she's an actress and a musician.
Hmm.
Two, of course, people may know he'd be so mean. No, he can act. Also, apparently, he's a sweetheart. That's all I'm saying. He's just fake mean, and he's a sweetheart.
He does do the junior edition of which is his cooking show, his main
Master
one?
Chef.
MasterChef.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not he works fine with children, so I think he'd be all right. I
Also,
love Gordon
like,
Ramsay.
I do too. I do too. I'm watching MasterChef right now, and I'm like, he's actually lovely. So, you know, I thought this one was really funny when I thought of it because, okay, Chris, sorry. Thanks, Mary. If you know any of the tea, Olivia Rodrigo came out with a song, "Cut Driver's License," where she referenced that pretty blonde girl who was Sabrina Carpenter. So I was like, immediately, they already have a beef. How great would it be? Because Buffy and Cordy have a beef.
Why is she mad at Sabrina Carpenter?
There was a whole guy situation. I don't think she's actually mad. It was just a reference in a song, and then the internet went crazy. So I thought it was funny. Anyway, that's what
you know so much celebrity gossip. I was watching Thursday night or Thursday reading update on Friday, and you were spilling all the Hollywood tea there as well.
What was I talking about?
I don't even remember, but I was like, how does Kristen know this?
I don't know. I don't know.
All right.
Okay. Can we see it?
What I'm listening. Listen, you can put him in anything and I would watch it. That's what I'm
honestly,
thinking,
same. So of course we all know Penn from You, probably. Maybe Gossip Girl.
Gossip Girl. That's what I know him from.
I didn't watch it. I just know he's in it. But I was like, I need someone, because of course this cast is like, he at least visually looks younger than when I think of the 90s Buffy cast. But I also think the age, I just think if they rebooted it modern, they would go younger, like visually.
Yes. Well, it was the thing back in the day to cast like 35-year-olds as 17-year-olds, whereas now they are. It feels like, anyways, at least the streamers, it feels like are trying to cast younger.
Right. So I was like, who is like a little bit older than these people, but still looks younger? Because kind of Angel was, right? And also who looks like he can brood real well. And that's Penn. Look at him.
Yeah, no, I support this.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am recasting Buffy with a modern cast.
When you clicked on this Walking Dead thumbnail, did you not suspect we would be doing this? A natural assumption. No, we are not sponsored by 90s TV shows today, so
that's right.
We're challenging one another.
And this has been a challenge, but
I've been crushing it.
Listen, thank you. All right.
Wow.
Now Spike
was my favorite. Lost me.
He's my favorite character of all time. Reed actually came up with Evan Peters.
Okay.
I'm like, fine. I was like, fine, because I couldn't think of anyone. I mean, look at him. He has hair that is blonde sometimes.
No one can put on a British accent, and no one can dye their hair.
So there we are. That's not the best one. But my hawk is Faith, which Reed also thought of, and I was like, that's great. That's actually great.
I want to talk about this one briefly.
Yeah.
One of my character flaws, and I actually have two character flaws specifically when it comes to Buffy that could rock our friendship. I don't like Faith.
You and Maddie both. What is with you guys?
I want to like Faith. Wait till I tell you what my second character flaw with Buffy is. I won't be doing that live on air. Things could be thrown. It could get violent.
Is it Spike?
No, it's not to do with Spike. I like Spike.
Okay.
I don't like Evan Peters as Spike, but you know what? I support everyone's fan.
It wasn't my favorite but here we are. It wasn't my favorite. I couldn't think of anyone
From the
else.
man who spelled Xander wrong. No,
Yeah.
just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah, not a huge fan, but actually like a different take on Faith that feels like a different version of that, like a 2023 version of that in the spirit of like Maya Hawk. I could see that and I think I would like it a lot more cuz I want to like Faith in theory.
Mhm.
That's the weird thing about this character for me. But it just doesn't work for me at the end of the day, but I could see this. I really like this.
You know what? We're gonna have to dive deeper into that when you come hang out and we play board games. That's all
Okay.
we're gonna talk about. It's just like what your deal with Faith is. It's gonna be great. Look forward to it.
I haven't even told you the other hot take. That's what you're actually going to want to be talking about. But anyways, moving along.
All right. Oz.
Oh,
So Reed came up with this one too. Credit to Reed. Joe Carey is Oz. I was like, you know what? I see it. Yeah,
yeah, I
I
can
see
see
it.
that. Yeah.
Who played Malfoy could be Spike. No,
Mm.
I disagree.
You know, he was on The Flash. I don't even remember his character's name. And he wasn't bad, but I just, yeah, I don't see it now. I don't think.
Maybe a child Spike with the hair.
Mm.
All
Yeah.
right. I want Kate McKinnon to be Joyce.
You know where Joyce's character ends up, right? And you
Well,
want to see that?
not if there's a look. We're not saying we're gonna modernly recast it and have the same exact show, right?
Oh, okay.
So I can see it because she's a cool mom. She can be a cool mom.
Okay.
Oh, because I had two people, William. Just two people. All right, that's it. That's all I got.
Except
And
for
you have one final slide, I know.
we do. We want you.
Yeah.
So no details given out right now, but what we would like for you to do is we're thinking about activities to do during our pizza party finale challenge, and we would like for you to nominate, I would say 1 to 3, be realistic, of your favorite 90s characters. Could be through TV, could also be an iconic 90s movie. You can put them in the chat now. You can put them in the comments later. We will read them after and be choosing some of them for an activity that we are going to do in our finale show. So if you're watching live now, feel free to put them in the chat before you forget. And then if you're watching later, feel free to put them in the comments.
It's gonna be
That was
super
a
fun.
slip. Yes.
Yep. That was a slip. I do have one more slideshow, and I'm wondering if we need to do this after we talk about the book or before. Do you know where this would best
Yes, I
be
do.
placed?
Let's okay, so if you are joining us for the first time, we are going to do a non-spoilery segment, the gold star segment, and then we will be spoiling at least compendium 1 of The Walking Dead in our book report segment. We will let you know when that happens. Kristen, the thing that you are talking about, I think if you want to show it in between the two, maybe might be a good little transition. Do you think?
In between the book and the other thing?
In
that
between
we-
spoiler free and spoilers.
Oh, yeah. I like that. I like
You
that.
think that? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, yes. So let's move into the gold star segment. And I'll tell you right now, with no delay, I got one book past this. I did not finish
Oh,
compendium
okay.
through.
One like trade?
Yeah, one
Because the
trade.
chapters are
equivalent.
like, yeah, okay.
Or two. Sorry, two after this, I believe. Really quickly, I'll just say it was a really tough week. Kristen knows some of the details. It was rough. I started reading this when I was in a rougher headspace, which I do think probably will impact a little bit about how I felt about it. Not totally. And I'll get into it then. But I do think it might be helpful before we talk about spoiler free to say that both of us have read the equivalent, at least, of Compendium 1 previously. Both of us watched a good chunk of the TV show. And I think I'm correct in saying we started reading the comics while the show was on. So I think this is a unique experience for both of us where some time has passed since we've watched the show and we're revisiting the comics after a significant period of time. That's true for both of us, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But both of us a huge fan of the show when it first started, so we'll share a little bit about that for both of us. Yeah, but just wanted to give a little bit of preface because I think there's no way we could go back in time and read this without having watched the show. We can't tell you what our thoughts would have been. So do feel like it's good to be honest about that.
Absolutely.
So Kristen, with that being said, which would you like to start? Would you like me to start with sort of
Um,
the non-spoilery?
I feel like I want you to start because I've been so curious what you're going to say after you teased me in a voice memo. So I want to know so bad.
Well, that's fair because I think I made you go first last time with non-spoilery. So for me, if you've never watched before, I like to do things in sort of like the things I really liked and the things that really didn't work for me. So I'll kind of do it that way. The things I really liked, I especially tried to go back in my brain to this time frame when this series was coming out. I even did some googling to see what horror comics had been out previously, and particularly ongoing horror comics. So not ones that were like a self-contained 10 to 12 issue like horror comic, but something that was sort of ongoing. And this really came out in a dry spell of horror comics. Certainly there were several of the 80s and 90s. There were some miniseries. But this I really think was one of the only times, or one of the first in a while, I should say, for an ongoing horror series. And the reason I'm kind of sharing all that is to say one thing that continues to stick out that I think really shines is the world building in this book. I really think the world building in this book is top tier. Still is today when I think about other world building for things that exist outside of existing universes, Marvel universe, DC universe, etc. I think it's top tier, and I also think what's really well done is from the very beginning the rules of the world in The Walking Dead, as expansive as it really is, even in just this first compendium, are brought out in a very show not tell way. You don't get heavy exposition in this book. You find out the stakes and rules of this world very naturally, either by watching it happen right in front of you and then the characters debriefing, or by having like a natural conversation between someone who's seen this in another part of the world, and then is like kind of adding that detail to somebody else. And that's actually really hard to do for a world that is like whole cloth created. You rarely are going to see that. Like it usually worlds like that require, especially in the early volumes, much heavier exposition. So to me, that remains probably one of the greatest strengths of this book. I also think there are certain characters. I'm thinking of Rick. I'm thinking of Tyrese, at least in this compendium. I know Abraham, if we were to finish compendium 2, has this. Some characters have really remarkable character growth. It's really natural. The stakes make sense. The events of the book change how they see the world and their role in it in a really natural way. I don't think that's even across the larger cast, and I'll talk about that in the things I didn't love. But I think that sticks out. And then I would just add two more things for like my overall. I think the art, for the most part, is really strong. There are moments in this that are John Byrne baby. There are two that I'm thinking of specifically.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Um, I also think there's some same face syndrome for the blonde women in this book. Frankly, I was really struggling. I was struggling at multiple points. But, and this is interesting, Larry's comment to bring up in a second. To me personally, black and white art was such a risk. There are so many people who will not open a book that is black and white. I don't know why, but that
Used to be my
remains a
dad.
bias.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. My
and
dad
that's good
for
to
the
know.
most part. Yeah.
Because what I was going to say is, I actually think the black and white here adds a lot to the mood and the tone of the book. And it does this interesting thing that's a lot of black and white art is kind of more cartoony. And I'm not the best at describing art like you or like Reed would be, but like a lot of it is a bit cartoony at times, I think, but here it does this interesting blend where it's cartoony, certainly at times, like some of the features of the people, in my opinion, are kind of drawn in that style. But then it also has this thing where it's very, at times, realistic and like kind of graphic. And I think when you marry those two things together, what you get is this interesting thing where on page, it feels like innocence is being lost. It feels like this thing where people have really big stars in their eyes, right? That are like this kind of cartoony thing, are having their innocence ripped when you get to those brutal moments. So for me, the black and white really works well. And then the last thing that I think is a huge strength that stood out to me is from the beginning, and I do have qualms with some of this, but there are lots of page turning moments that are super effective. You turn a page and it's suddenly way more horrific than you thought, or suspense is building over a page. And I'm thinking of when they're discovering the prison as a good example. And you turn it and it's not at all what they think. And it's like you have a visceral reaction, be it you're horrified or be it you're laughing. And I think that's really remarkable given like that this was some of Robert Kirkman's first certainly published work. Um, so those are sort of my overall things that I loved. Do you share some of those things before I don't want to jump right into my cons? I know I can get a bit preachy.
No, absolutely. Especially, I think the black and white art, especially for the time, even, I feel like people were less likely to even put out a book on like a big three, that was black and white that people would pick up. There was a lot of groundbreaking for the time, and we have to mention that too, right?
For
Um,
sure.
and one of my cons, I'll come back to this later, but I have to mention that Kirkman actually, yeah, apparently the echo's gone now. Is it? So P.S. Dad, sounds like it's me, so help me with this. I don't know what's happening.
But yes,
But
in life, I do have a dramatic echo. I leave an imprint on everyone in my surrounding.
um anyway, so apparently Kirkman pitched this book on a lie. He said this is actually not the regular zombie story. There's going to be like a sci-fi like twist. There's going to be like an alien twist in it, which obviously didn't happen. And I'll come back to that. But yeah, it was groundbreaking for the time, certainly. I also agree with the black and white art. I have to say, I have the same feeling with the black and white art as I do like an Ito book. So the really like gory, like horrific scenes don't hurt as much and aren't as like yikes because it's in black and white. I don't have to see all the blood. I don't have to see all the gore. And there's something nice about that because it gets extra horrific in the book, I think, versus
Maybe,
like, I mean, the show's
maybe,
horrific, but
yeah, yes, we'll get into that for sure. Do you feel like that's really interesting? I haven't thought about it in this exact way. Do you feel like it feels less exploitative when it's in black and white, but you still get the impact of something horrific has happened? That's kind of what I'm hearing you say, and
yeah.
I'm agreeing with that. I may be making an assumption.
No, yeah, that's absolutely what I mean. Like,
Mm.
there's stuff in like Ito books that are so grotesque and weird. And if it was in black and white, I think I would have more of a problem with it. Instead, I just enjoy it. And I think there was like a lot of moments like that where people were getting their heads chopped off. People were getting like all these things were happening and it was gross, but it was also like, oh, I don't have to see all the red. I don't have to see all the blood. It doesn't feel as real, but like in a good way, right? And like my dad was saying, I actually think this is a popular opinion. I've heard people prefer Tony more, and he just didn't stick around. So, and my dad's happy about the colorized Walking Dead, and it would have made the characters
Yes.
easier to differentiate, absolutely. Because it does. Yeah, he definitely has that problem. Like you and I were even talking about a character before he came
Hmm.
on, and I was like, "Oh, that was actually this person," and you were like, "Oh, it's because well, they were both older white dudes. Like we just didn't know. Like I don't know." Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I would agree with that. That would have made it easier, absolutely.
Yeah, and Larry, I am kind of curious to revisit. Maybe I would do like the first 3 volumes that are colorized once I don't know how far they've gotten in that process, but just to see, like to compare, I would personally, because I half of me agrees with you and half of me doesn't. I love the black and white. I think actually for me a lot might be lost per everything we've just brought up if it's not in black and white, but I also totally feel like I was hindered by constantly trying to remember who these people were, which I'll talk a little bit more about in my cons because it was more than just not being able to tell some of them apart physically on page. But yeah, we don't usually do it this way. But do you want to continue with any pros, or do you want me to jump in cons and then we'll come back to?
Yeah, jumping cons, and we'll go
Okay.
back.
So for me, I, I think I read through the equivalent of the first 2 compendiums roughly after the first season had ended. I actually watched I distinctly have really clear memories of watching the first season over, like, I think it was Memorial Day weekend. They AMC, like, played them all back to back, and myself and my sister and her boyfriend at the time, like, binged the whole day. I have really strong, good memory about that day. And I remember exploring the comics kind of up through maybe season 2, and then I at that point, I fell off the comics only because I was getting confused between, like, the 2 storylines, and I didn't want to do that. So I always had the intention of coming back. I own the first 3 compendiums to show you that when I read this the first time, I really, really liked it at the very least. One thing that was interesting this time is I didn't enjoy it quite as much this time, and I really sat with trying to figure out why. I did share I'm hearing a little echo. I don't know if anyone else is. But I did share that um, for me, I can't not have watched the show, you know what I mean? Like, I had the show in my mind when I was reading the book, and I think I'm not sure, and I can't go back in time and know the difference, but I imagine that 2 things were happening that added to my enjoyment of the book. The first thing was that I already built an emotional connection from the show to several of these characters. So when they popped up on page, they had emotions from me that the characters on the page didn't necessarily earn themselves on their own. It's not to discredit, of course, the source material, but, I have to think about that. The other thing is I was reading very furiously to see what's gonna happen with these characters, you know what I mean? Like, that was a huge pull for me, was to see where the characters in the comic went. So I think I really thought about why I enjoyed it less, and I think that, and it's not to say I hated it or anything like that, we'll get to our ratings later, but I think I kept those 2 things in mind. They kept popping back up as reasons, where my experience the first time would be different than my experience the second time. So with that said, some of the things that I didn't super love, it was funny on Goodreads. I was looking back at what I gave these because I rated them trade by trade. I try to get credit. Kristen's like, I'm only going to get credit for the compendium. I was like, this is 8 volumes that I read. I'm going to get credit for.
I should have
And
done that.
and volumes 1 and 2 were pretty high for me. They were like a 4 and a 5, I think, or a 5 and then 4, I can't remember. But I distinctly remember towards the end of volume 3 and then volume 4, I really struggled. I think I gave them 3 each. And it did go up a bit towards the end, and we can get more of that into that with spoilers, but I that's when I messaged Kristen and I was like, "Oh boy, I am having a different experience." And I can tell you right now, with the mental state I'm in and what rut we just hit with this story, I might not finish. I just might not be able to push myself. And what it was for me really boiled down to 2 things. 1, the cast grew way too fast for me. I had so much trouble keeping track of who everyone was, and I've read this before and watched the show. So that's really saying a lot. And, it also made it so that you couldn't sit with the characters for long enough to really know who they were. So that impacts, like, your connection to them, your ability to try to understand why they make different decisions later on. But the thing that really got me the most, for sure, in 3 and 4 was just the I don't know how to describe this actually, but everyone just lost their minds, pairing off with each other. Now, I wanna say, at the end of the world, we all want love, or most of us probably would want love, and I'm not saying it's unrealistic that if you thought your life was in danger and you could be hooking up with someone the night before, you wouldn't do it. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's not realistic. What was unrealistic was just how fast these people would, like, swap partners almost irrationally and indiscriminately to me. It took me out of it entirely. It was like whiplash. It was like shocking moment after shocking moment after shocking moment, which meant when actual shocking moments happened later, I was a bit desensitized at that point. Now, Kristen knows me. I'm not a prude at all. I'm not a prude in any way. I watch things with tons of what would be rated R, if it was a movie content. But this just didn't feel rational to me or with purpose to me. And it took it down quite a bit. Like, if I had to think of the thing I didn't like the most, it was honestly that. Um, so that was a bit distracting. And it also was not lost on me that for me, most of the irrational decision making was the women. Just out of nowhere, they lost their minds. And that was annoying to me. So those are some of my, like, again, non-spoilery, sorry, just overall like pros and cons. And again, it kind of went very up and down. And when I started Compendium 2, I did really like the first two volumes a lot. So there still is a possibility that I'll continue this reread. But if I'm just looking at this, it was real up and down, and some of the downs were tough to recover from.
I think that's very understandable. I don't disagree with anything you said. One of my major issues with it was one, I will say, I read this many years ago. Reading it now, I'm not giving it the same rating. Absolutely not. So we can talk about them more when we rate it. But
Wait, what did you rate it? Were you able to see what you rated it last time? Because you use
I
Goodreads
was,
really well. Okay.
I
I want
was,
you to
yeah,
share what that is when we get to stars, if that's okay.
absolutely,
I didn't look.
yes, 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 absolutely. I will say I read it so long ago that I think when I started my Goodreads, I put it in there. So I don't know what date I read it, but I did have a rating. So, and I think I actually got through the first two compendiums because this collects through 48. Yeah, I think I got through the first like 100 issues or so back when I read it. The characterization, yeah, like the pacing was wild throughout this thing. There like wasn't any. Like, it was just like when I think about, because you can't help but compare it to something you've seen, right? When I think about comparing this to the show, they got so much more right when they translated it to the show, as far especially with pacing in those first like several seasons, which covers this book, right? Oh my gosh, it was so much better. It was so much better. They were just so fast. Everything, again, we won't spoil anything right now, but everything with Shane happened like so fast. Everything was just Rick getting to where he needed to get to happen so fast. Like, it was all so fast, and I didn't remember that from reading it. It was like, whoa. And I think part of that, if I were to guess, would probably be because, Kirkman wasn't a huge name when he started this. He didn't know if this thing was going to take off. He probably had all these huge ideas that he wanted to get happening real fast. So he had to do what he had to do. And I get that, but it doesn't mean it was good. Right? I hated the pacing throughout this. It was so fast. It was so fast and not in a great way. It was page turnery. Like, I want to know what would happen. Even though I've read it before, I still want to know what would happen. Like, I was still interested. I forgot a lot of the points, especially the huge differences in the shows and the show characters and what happens versus the comic. So I'm still very interested, but I was like, whoa, this thing needs to calm down a little bit. And I do wonder if I continue, if that levels out at some point, because obviously people are buying it, he can slow down a little. And I think we got it to slow down a little bit toward the end. Like, it got better, certainly. Those first, like the first half of this, I was like, whoa, it's just so much happening. That pacing was rough for me. And because it was so rough, people were, like you said, the characters came in so fast. It was hard to like figure out who was who and what was going on and who was with who, for sure. And I never felt like, maybe until the end of this, why am I caring about any of these people? Like, the
Mm,
whole time I was like, we were not getting to know these characters fast enough. It's not keeping up with this crazy pace, right? We're not
mm,
slowing down to be able to like get to know these characters and figure out why we need to like them. Versus I
mm,
feel like they did that really well in the show, especially with the first several seasons, You care about them for a reason, like you get to know them.
mhm.
And I'm huge on, I prefer characterization over like big events
Yeah.
and things happening. So I struggle with that too. As well as the dialogue. There when people started losing their minds, and that's understandable, but at the same time, there were moments where I was like, this is so cheesy, I can't handle it. Like, it was so like
Well, we know how you feel about
dramatic.
cheesy dialogue, so it's
It
well
was it was
established
a
that you don't
lot.
like it.
It was a lot. So
Yeah, the pacing, Elon has a comment that I remember to be true. It was one of the few long series that gets better as we go along.
yeah.
My memory, and even just starting the first two, which to be fair, the first two volumes that are in this compendium, I think are near perfect. If I'm totally honest, volume one is a near perfect volume. In my opinion, the way they engage you right away, and it's very silent for a lot of it, right? He's just
Hmm.
walking around, but you are like engrossed. And again, I just want to say, It's not a total wash, even though I had some real lows in here. The highs are very high, especially for the time. Even still today, I can appreciate some of that. But my memory is, and from starting Compendium 2, that yes, the pacing slows down. And Kristen, I think you're probably spot on. It's like you want to include a bunch, you want to see like what's going to sell really quickly, and then you can fall into what you love. I'm going to shout out a comparison that no one in the chat is going to know. But if you have watched the show, we may become best friends after this. Who knows? No promises. But it reminds me of Black Sails, the pilot of Black Sails, certainly, and the first couple episodes. When I think about my friends and recommending a show to them, I'm almost embarrassed to show them. They're different when you watch them the second or third or fourth time, but because especially the first one, it was on Stars, and so they were like, "Let's just shove all this stuff in there." And because they think like what's going to get someone with ratings. And I know for a fact that was also the network, you know what I mean, doing that as well. But it's like what's going to sell? Let's grab them really quick. Let's show them how edgy we are. And then it becomes the most beautiful character driven story that's ever been put on television, period. And so that is my memory, Elon, that this slows down pacing quite a bit. And you do get to spend time with the characters. But I agree, Kristen. Really, the only characters where if I didn't have any connection to them before, which again, I can't know, like I cannot make that happen. But I do feel like Rick and again, Tyrese, I would say for me, I did feel like if I read this and never watched the show, I would at least be grounded in Rick, potentially Tyrese. But you're right. Like everyone else, for the most part, no, not how fast this was going. And we're not even gonna we'll talk about it in spoilers, but one of my favorite TV and comics characters is Michonne. And I loathe her first couple of issues in this series.
Same. Yeah.
That was a real
Same.
low for me that I forgot. I remembered
Yeah.
and then I forgot. I was like, no. So anyway.
Well, and a huge to that point, one of
Yeah.
my favorite characters in the show is Carol, and she's not great in this comic. Oh boy, she's really not.
Yeah. Any other things that and I didn't really notice the cheesy dialogue. There was one dialogue choice that bothered me a ton that we'll talk about in spoilers. But I didn't me personally, the dialogue wasn't too bad. As far as
I
like thinking about your cons.
well, and it's not everything. I think it was
Mhm.
more so like when when people would just turn like that. So like when
Yeah.
there were
Yes.
moments
Yes.
where Rick just flew off the handle,
Yeah.
and then
Sure.
his dialogue was just so dramatic, and I was like, "Whoa, dude!" I mean, I know this could very well happen, but at the same time, I
Mhm.
think it's still a pacing issue.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah.
let's see what I've missed a lot, but my dad claims the art in the first issues are what made it.
Interesting. Okay.
Carl's treated a lot better in the comic too.
Carl's age different. Well, I mean, he appeared younger to
Yeah,
me in the
yeah,
series
for sure.
than he did in the comic series versus the show, which does change actually several plot points. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about Larry, what I'll give you credit for, where we can agree, I guess I should say, about the art is the first volume is mostly silent. You know, it's Rick discovering what's going on. So in that sense, the art has to tell the story, and it wouldn't work without a strong artist. So I would certainly
Mm-hmm.
agree in that. But I also think like I know for a fact from the Walking Dead tour in Cynthiana, Kentucky, um, that a lot of the visuals were very strong in Robert Kirkman's head as well. So it really was a creative partnership, even if it's a dialogue light. But I could see what you're saying. The art draws you into Rick and like feeling immediately like, yeah, what is going on for sure.
I can't wait to see your stars.
Oh, it's happening.
It's happening.
Okay,
Isn't
so
it time?
it's that time. It's that
Yeah.
time, folks. We rate out of 5. I did not know what I didn't use Goodreads when I read this, so I can't tell you what I originally rated it. If I had to go back in my memory, the whole thing was probably a combined 4. For me, I won't delay. I gave it 3.5. 3 for me is it was fine. So it was just above that to very solid. I actually think if I didn't read the first 2 volumes of Compendium 2, it would have been a 3 for me. But then I was like, yes, I can kind of remember that the pacing slows down. It settles in a bit more. The cast is shrinks. We won't talk about why very quickly. So some of my problems go away pretty quickly. And so for that reason, I bumped it up a half star and gave it 3.5.
Wonderful. All right. You know me. I'm going to do this live.
Dramatic unveiling.
Dramatic. Here we go. Here, let's see if I can get a sticker off. It is dramatic because it's taking a while. Here we are. Maybe? Oh no. Dollar Tree stickers. What are we doing?
Hey, don't shame the name of Dollar Tree.
Listen. It was a great price point. I'm just getting,
Now
getting them
$1.25
off.
tree.
I know. What is that about?
I don't know, but I do love their $5 items. It's a good little aisle to go down.
It is a cute aisle. So we got 2 so far. We getting
Oh.
more? Yeah, we're getting more.
All right.
All right. You know to do half stars. So we're
I know
keeping
it.
it 3. And I will say my previous rating when I read this many years ago was 5
For the compendium.
for the compendium.
Wow.
So
So interesting.
it
You know,
changed.
it and that's okay. Like it may change again. Like I think that's really you're different people at different points in your life. And kind of what you need from a story also changes as you go through it.
Well, and I
And
will
it
say I read way less comics at the time, right? And
sure,
I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
perhaps that also could buy
Mhm.
into my rating.
Some of the series that got me into reading comics, if I were to honestly rate them, would be like a 3 now. But I love them and I'm never going to give them up. And I think, Elon shared that this is one of their favorite things that got them into comics the last time we had a show. And like, no one's going to take that away from you. Even if you yourself, when you revisit these earlier ones, like them less or more at different times in life, like, I think there is something to be said about like, the ones that made you really get into the hobby, they really stick with you and for good reasons. Like and again, even though I gave it 3.5, there's aspects of this that are like 5 star when I compare it to something else. So it's interesting. And I think it's okay
Mm-hmm.
that things fluctuate like that throughout time.
Absolutely. So,
Um, yeah. Well, Kristen, we both we shared we both loved the show, we both
mhm.
did nerdy things. Kristen prepared a slideshow,
I
very
did.
impressive. I did not. I was just going to share I wore a Kentucky shirt today
Hey.
because if you don't know, your boy Robert Kirkman, pride and joy of Cynthiana, Kentucky, which is not a large place and not a large state, um is really important to the community. And I got to go a couple years ago when they did Walking Dead Day in Cynthiana. I got the exclusive first issue reprint for that day, which was very cool. And he signed a bunch of those copies. Mine was not signed, but the whole town decorated for that day. Maddie wanted me to share with you that she grew up across the street from the hospital that opening volume is in. And I can tell you because we toured the hospital on that day, it looks exactly like that. I know all hospitals look the same, but so much detail about actual Cynthiana is in these early issues. It makes me sad that they changed that for the show. And I just only to say, because you have a slideshow, I don't have that, but just to say one thing that was really cool about the day is we're in a really poor state in the state of Kentucky. There are great people that live here. And that's a very poor community. It's a very rural, small community. And Robert Kirkman went out of his way to say the reason he wanted that hosted there and not in another city or town, which could have benefited the show more, is he wanted that boost to the economy. And they've done reports after that day, and it was indeed a boost to the economy. All the businesses got involved. And I think that's just really cool for creators that got really big to give back to the communities that poured into them. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that. But I want to hear about your nerdy era and see some of the photos you brought as well.
Absolutely. And before I miss these, Elon says this is the book that got me into comics. There's a special place in my heart. Absolutely. I can remember watching the show and Attack on Titan around the same time. I just had to know what happened. Yeah, it was like especially when the show came out, it was such a phenomenon, right? Like, it was wild. Just recently made a Walking Dead reread because I was missing just 4 trades to finish the series. I found that I enjoyed more of the series back in the day when I was reading a trade every few months. Making a read through felt like a chore, so I started spacing my reading more and more. Overall, the high point in the series are entertaining, but as whole has many flaws. And I think that's fair. Like when you binge something, it certainly hits differently, right? So as far as my slideshow, real quick, I took this off my wall. I want to show that I met Norman Reedus many years ago at a con that I did not have this scanned photo. Look at me, I'm so happy. I was just so happy. And he was very sweet. So yay. But Reed and I went to Walker Stalker Con in Atlanta, again many years ago now. And it was a great time. What year was this? 2016? Yeah, 2016. We also went to Sonoy, Georgia, which is where they film basically everything. And that was really cool. We went on one of those tours. I don't have any photos from that in the slide, but more con photos I felt were necessary to show, like Norman Reedus and Jeffrey Dean Morgan holding hands during the Q&A, which was just cute, right? But of course, we got some autographs. The guy who played Eugene, Josh McDermott, he was lovely. And we took photos with him. Look at us. We look like little fetuses, don't we? Look at
You're
those
like a
babies.
baby.
Look at those babies. So this is just to show that we obviously were big fans enough to go to this con where it was all the Walking Dead stuff. And they were all like very nice people that we met at least. We were babies. Of course, I was very excited to meet Melissa McBride, who's Carol, who's my favorite. And she was lovely. I remember the only thing I really said to her, I mean, it was small talk, but then I was like, so at what point, I said something like, at what point do I need to like give up on these two being together? Because that's my ship. And she was like, never give up. And I was like, thank you. That's all I need to hear. Thank you so much. So,
Okay, can we talk about no spoilers, but
yeah.
the inscription in that autograph?
Yeah.
Wow.
You like that?
Yeah. No
Yeah.
spoilers,
It's a
but
good
if you
one.
know, you know.
It's a good one. Yeah, it's a cute photo of all of us. Look at us. And of course, I got to meet Andrew Lincoln, who was lovely. He complimented our shirts immediately. Look at how happy we are. And then, this is probably my favorite one, of course. I was like, let me hang out with the guys, and then Reed can be mad about it. So, love that. And then this has nothing to do with The Walking Dead, but I have to have to throw it in because I was like, hey Dad, I know you have scans of all this stuff. Can you send it to me? And he did. So thank you, Dad. But then you threw in this, and I was like, why? And probably because it was the same weekend. We just rolled in a Criminal Records, which is a record store we wanted to go to in Georgia, and we were like, oh, there's Stranger Things music playing. That's cool. La la la. And we just looked through stuff. And we're like, what are all these people like surrounded this person up there? And it's because it was the freaking teacher from Stranger Things. So we just like literally hopped up on stage. We were the last people because we just rolled up, took a photo with him, and left, which was cool. He's very nice.
I also love Reed's hair in this photo
You love
so
it.
much. It's my favorite photo of Reed of all time now.
I love that. Oh, I also was wearing a Stranger Things shirt. So it was just like extra wild. So he
Oh,
thought I
I didn't
was
even notice
there.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just
Wow, that
thought
was
I was there.
fate.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
very.
mean, you said it, and it was a phenomenon. And we didn't say this in the I don't think this came up in our non-spoilery, but another thing about this series that I think is interesting, of course there've been zombie books before, of course. And there have been lots of zombie things afterwards, of course. One thing that I thought was really cool about this and why I think partly it did so well is it made you realize that when all the structures of society fall, it's not just the zombies you would need to be afraid of, or the walkers, or the roamers, or the biters. It's each other. But also showed you really beautiful moments where people will sacrifice themselves for one another. And my dad isn't a huge TV person, and my family are very conservative about what they watch on television. But my father loves the first like 6 seasons of this show. And my mom would get so mad about it. She's like, "Why are you watching that zombie show?" And one time he got so serious, he got annoyed. She was like pestering him, and he said, "It's not just a zombie show, Debbie. This is really about the heart of humanity." And he's right. He was right.
Yeah.
Like I think again, like I think this book did really change the game in how you present a post-apocalyptic world. And I have to give Robert Kirkman the credit. Did the show execute some of those moments better? Yes. But I think the concept to even address and the scenarios in which were presented here were the show could not have done that without this. So it was really a phenomenon, and I think that was partly why it was a version of that apocalypse that we've never really seen in real detail up till that point.
Well, and to Kirkman's credit, he had a lot to do with the show.
Sure,
He
yeah.
was helping write, and he was in the behind the scenes, and so he really. I love that he expanded on and changed things. That he was probably went back and was like, "What do I want to change now?
Yeah.
How do I want to make this better?" And he did
Yeah.
it.
Paper shout out to no shout out to Amazon Prime, who I hate with a burning passion for not bringing back A League of Their Own season 2. I'm
Oh
not going
yeah.
to talk about it or I actually will cry and like curse. But I think that was one thing that was great about the Paper Girls series, also unceremoniously canceled, is exactly that. And I heard a lot of interviews with Brian K. Vaughan when they were coming back about like, we did this and here's how we're doing it better. And I think that that's fine. And it's good to admit it would be boring to make it a straight adaptation, frankly. And it would be boring to think that as a creator you haven't grown, which having read lots of Robert Kirkman after this, I know for a fact he continues to grow as a writer. So yeah, I think definitely all the credit there for sure.
And real quick from Batmanda, I've not read The Walking Dead, but I'm working my way through Invincible, and he's an excellent writer. I've read some of it. I need to go back to it. Has anyone read Firepower or Oblivion Song? I have not. My dad says, based on your pics, it shocked me how much prettier she was in person than on the show. Dad, I mean, they don't have showers, like there's stuff going on in that show. Also,
I
I
was
thought
like, Kristen? She's beautiful all
I
the
was
time, Larry.
so
And
much
you
better on the
know
show.
that.
Mary says, before the pandemic hit, I decided to go to Walker Stalker Con 2.
Mm.
So much fun. Met Norman. He was lovely. Lesson learned, do the things you want. The world could shut down. Absolutely.
That's so true, Mary. You were having a meta experience.
Yeah, truly. Will you be watching the spinoff with Norman Reedus? So I was so excited when they announced this because it was going to be Daryl and Carol, right?
Yeah.
And then Melissa couldn't be involved, and I was like, what are we doing here? And now I'm hearing she's actually going to be in it. So if that's real, then yes. But I have to kind of go back through the show because I never saw the end. So.
Is that different than the Maggie Negan one? Is that two different things? And also, is there a Rick and Michonne one too?
I think they're just like it ended and they're spinning off everything.
Mm-hmm.
I will share what my script professor said. The way you show love is through sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
You can't show proper true love without sacrificing.
It's true. But honestly, I mean, I do love Warrior Nun. This isn't what we're here for. But I just want to say, if you have not watched A League of Their Own on Amazon Prime, which I believe Kristen still has not, it has to be one of my favorite shows of all time. It just has to be. And it hurts really bad. I did really love Warrior Nun. I'm so excited about that, but it's not quite the same thing for me. So, yeah. It is what it is. Sad day. But thank you for sharing about your nerdy endeavor and my nerdy endeavor. Yep. And let's get nerdy to see if there are any kind of spoiler. We teased a couple things, but if there are any more spoiler filled thoughts, certain character trajectories that we wanted to talk about, this is your warning in the chat. If you don't want to be spoiled for the comic series, as we alluded to, the show goes lots of different ways, very early on, actually. But yeah, what are you thinking that we couldn't say earlier that you kind of want to chat a little bit more about with spoilers?
So I think one of the big things we want to touch on is some of the language in this book. When did this come out? Like 2003 it started, I think.
Early 2000s.
I feel like I looked it up because the moment Rick dropped an R bomb, I was like, what's happening here? And then I was like, oh, that was very common in the early 2000s. So we have to, I guess, take that into consideration, of course. There was also an F slur that was thrown around, which also was just like so strange because they were calling this small child Carl. It's like, what's happening? Quarrel. Um, so that was weird. But then, of course, the one that we do want to talk about, the use of this, Otis, who was one of the people who was on Herschel's farm. He drops an N bomb. He did it. And here's the thing, Jessica and I were talking about this beforehand, and we're like, what do we do with this? What do we do with this? I think there's different ways this could have been done, right? It could have not been included, but if you want to show how terrible Otis is and you want him to be saying that, why are we not putting in and some asterisk, right? Because as you, of course, mentioned, this is something very common with language in comics, right? We don't have to, like, we know what you're saying. You could put an F in those asterisks, okay? Like, we know what it means. Why didn't that happen? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I when I knew I couldn't get through Compendium 2, I was like, I feel comfortable talking about for sure things I didn't love. But this was when, particularly the Otis instance. I mentioned Brian K. Vaughan. He's used the R word in his early work. I'm sure he wouldn't do that now. And I mean, when I say the R word, I mean like as a slur, like as meant to be a slur or an insult, not in any sort of actual diagnostic sort of way. Um, and for me, the one that I couldn't get over was the N word because, and again, full disclosure, Kristen and I are not, as white people, the authority on this
Right.
conversation. I do think there are a lot of different ways of looking at this. You just mentioned several, could have not been included, could have used the asterisks. I think where I struggle with spelling it out is that it was very commonplace in any kind of comic to use symbology, and it's triggering for people. Like, it is not unreal to me or unrealistic to me that a man, well, I don't really know where Otis was originally from, potentially Georgia, of his age in that situation would not use that word. Even today, forget the stress of the apocalypse. We live in a rural state and people have ignorant beliefs. There are people who don't have those ignorant beliefs. There are people who don't realize the weight of their language that they're using. There are people who are full well aware and will go out of their way to use that language. Certainly, Otis probably would fall into that category. But to me, it felt just unnecessary. I think, especially given the creator being a white person themselves, I think if you were wanting to include it to show the bigotry still exists, even when all of our lives are just meat to these roamers, you still, I don't fault him, I don't think, me personally. And again, happy to hear other opinions for him using that. That makes sense. But spelling it out just felt wholly unnecessary, especially for a white creator. Like, it just felt like, why do that? We would all know what this said, and all of us would know exactly what you were trying to convey about that character. And again, it's hard to talk about, but like with the R word again as a slur, this was so commonplace at the time, and it doesn't make it right. But the N word at that time was not commonplace in a casual setting like
Mm-hmm.
that. You know very well when you're writing that. I'm not ascribing any political or or bigoted beliefs to Robert Kirkman. I genuinely don't think that's at all what I'm saying. I want to be really clear. But I just think, like, even me then reading it knew, I don't know if that was the best thing for you to do, and if you were waffling on it, you'd go on the side of the expletives. That's the one that really stuck out to me. And again, I want to be clear. I can't say it enough. I'm not saying anything about Robert Kirkman. I'm not sure he would make this choice today. I did not look it up if anyone's asked him about this, but this is the one that is just, we can't not talk about it. I think it's a pretty big deal, actually.
Yeah, for sure. I think you covered it all. I mean, it's just like that one. I didn't expect it. It's like you said with the R. I was like, okay, it was the time. Doesn't mean it's right, but here we are. The F was like weird, just a weird choice, I think. But yeah, that one. I don't know. As far as other spoiler talk, was there any like deaths that you're like, why did we do that?
People getting their heads chopped off. Yes.
Not as far as how it happened, but like, oh, I think you made a mistake killing this character off.
The way they were depicted in this series, no, other than the one you mentioned earlier, which is like Shane dies way quicker in this than the amount of time we get to spend with him in the show. And also, a thing the show did really well is show the flashbacks of Shane and Rick's past together so that you could see that brotherly dynamic, which really adds to the um weight of when Rick finds out about what Shane and Lori have been doing while he's been in a coma, while he was sleeping, if you will. It's not a rom com though. And it also adds weight to the decision to kill Shane, or think about killing Shane, I should say, the way things actually go down. So, yeah, that's one that sticks out. Did you ask because you had one in mind?
No, but I will say I was surprised by them killing Tyrese that early on. So it felt very
Mm,
early to me, and definitely made me like. I was like, okay, I actually don't remember what happens when we're at this point, when
hmm
so many people were killed at the end of this compendium.
hmm
What's happening
Yeah.
from here on, you know? Also, did you ever, this is nothing, but it bothered me. Glenn, are you shaving your head every day? Like, why are you so bald? Like, wouldn't there be a little bit of hair that comes back? I'm so
He
confused.
looks so dumb.
He looks so dumb.
Although I will say, like, the haircuts were making it easier to tell everybody apart. So
There you go.
it's fine. I teased it, but the character entrance for me that was like, oh, just not great was Michonne. I did not understand immediately the incident. I don't just feel like Sunday afternoon talk, but the incident with Tyrese when she very first meets him, I was just like,
What are you
what? Because
doing?
it underrides, like, again, it's totally fine. It's not a judgment on somebody who would do that so quickly upon meeting someone. It just also didn't feel necessary to the story, like even a little
No,
bit.
not at
It,
all.
it was really wild to me. I was just like, what? And it also didn't really track with who she later becomes in the series. So for me, that
Yeah.
one was just like, what a wild way to introduce, as Freddie put in the chat earlier, probably the female character that is the most solid throughout the bulk of the series. It's kind of just a really wild way to introduce her in a way that, again, doesn't reflect at all who she later became, which happens. But,
So,
I hated
yeah,
that a lot.
yeah, I did too, and I'm glad that was changed in the show, obviously. Um, I think I think it also because of everything that happens to Michonne and the governor, right? You obviously care about that and it's terrible, but I feel like had they not introduced her in such a way and then just kind of immediately went into the governor thing, we lost a little of like how terrible that is. I think they did that in the
Agree.
show
Yeah.
well, right? But it was like, wow, like, this is
Be-
so strange to go from here we are to that and not even really get a feel of like how badass she is, because that's one of the best parts of Michonne is she's so good at what she's doing. She's been out there. Also immediately chopping up her two zombies. I was like, wait, I forgot it happened that fast. I was like, what about in the show when she really carried those things around for a long time, you know? I don't know. They
yeah, I
definitely
think,
changed that well.
yeah. And I want to use that instance to dwell a little bit more on something we talked about earlier, which is for me, and maybe you feel differently. I have no idea, but I don't think any of the depravity of humanity is unrealistic in this, even a little bit, if I'm honest. I live in this world. I have been in the field of social work for a while. I've seen really awful things happen to really good people. Um, and also really awful things happen to people that maybe were not so great themselves, and it's all still bad. I think like that act that the governor, that really torturous and sadistic, and invasive thing that happened between the governor and Michonne, I don't feel is unrealistic, and I don't feel like is out of place in this book. Me personally, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But to draw out on something you just said, what I think is happening there is we got to see the depravity And again, like you said, it's not to say it's ever right or anything or ever less bad. But what we could have had was a moment where we, one, saw the depravity of humanity, but also, two, saw a really tragic thing happen to a character we care so much about. Because that sometimes, for people who depravities are contextualized or washed away or flaked away, or people say, oh, there's just sick people in this world, it is different when it happens to someone you know and care about. For those people, for people who really just can't mentally put themselves there until it's somebody that they know, that could have been a moment for the series that just didn't have the same weight and didn't have the same heart, frankly, which is a weird thing to say, but true. Because we barely got any time with her, and yeah, the time we had was like bonkers and not in character later on. So I think that's a really good example of where pacing matters. Taking moments with characters matters. It's not to say that there aren't still great whoa moments, but you have to care about them somehow in a
Yeah.
different way for the story to resonate and not just be for shock value.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was that was the it's like you said, I think at the beginning, I feel like we had more character growth with Tyrese than a lot of other characters in the comic. And for him
Mm,
to be killed just as we're getting more of that, right? Um although his character, his storyline went weird places too. Like I don't know. It's hard. And I do wonder because I don't remember where it goes from here. So I'll probably be continuing in some fashion, but that was an interesting choice for me. I
mhm,
was like, that's interesting because like you got
mhm,
a lot of people and a lot of strengths were taken away. I was also like, wow, you really took Rick's hand real fast. Like, I don't know. And that they clearly changed that in the show as well. They were like, we're not
mhm,
going to do that so fast, because it really um, affects him. Obviously,
mhm,
someone who's supposed to be the strongest character we have now has a
mhm,
real disadvantage. And Carol, just Carol in general, what are we doing with this character? Like, and how did she go from what she is in this comic to what they made her in the show? Why even call her Carol at this point, honestly? Right? Like, that's not the same character.
yeah, and there's no I wouldn't say there's another character in this that is Carol from the show. What the series certainly does that a lot of adaptations do is combine characters together to make one, but yeah, I don't think there's a real parallel. I have no explanation for her or what the
It's
point
wild.
was. Like the behavior,
Honestly, yeah.
there was no that was the thing that I meant when I said, like, with the female characters, especially, it's like they would just, it's not unrealistic that you would do irrational things in a post-apocalyptic world. But if you're gonna do that, don't do it so frequently with characters, otherwise it's a wash. And two, have it have consequence. It really doesn't go anywhere. Some of these, like,
No.
moments are so, like, out of nowhere and don't go anywhere, and it's hard to know, like, what exactly he was thinking when he wrote those. I mean, I agree with what you said, like, you wanna get in a lot, you wanna add a lot of drama, but, like, yeah, ultimately just, not doesn't work for me
It was
sometimes.
just so strange, especially everything with Lori and her.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
And then Lori, when she
when she said she was from a small town in Kentucky. Is that the line? I was like,
I want everyone to know there's lots of queer women in
I know,
small
I was
towns in
like,
Kentucky.
Lori,
It's not
that's
that
not.
weird. I was laughing out loud. That part actually, it made me laugh.
Season one Carol was so different. I attributed 100% to Melissa McBride being awesome. I mean, she is awesome. But
And one, you
yikes.
know, I think there is, so again, I really had trouble with facial blindness. But what I think, Donna is the one that I think early TV Carol takes on the most. She's kind of meek. She's all about being like a mom, and
Hmm.
she's kind of judgy a little bit of the other women because she's quite conservative. She's in this relationship. I think that's Donna that I'm thinking of. That's kind of the start of Carol. And there are also reasons why sometimes they change They just like a name better for the show. Sometimes it doesn't
Sure.
sound Carol and Carl, sometimes they just want things that sound very different. So, yeah, but I can't remember any of the women, even towards the end of Compendium 2, which I definitely got to the first time, that kind of become who Carol becomes. But that's good.
Yeah, but it was also like, when I think back to them at the prison creating the committee that they make decisions with.
Hmm.
So it was like Dale, Rick, Tyrese, and there's like one other person, right? Who I can't think of. Um, but they were like, and so when Rick wakes up and sees they formed a committee, he's like, no women? And they were just like, yeah, like they didn't want to be a part of this.
You know
Like,
what? To be fair, these women probably shouldn't be leaders. I'm gonna
I
just
mean,
say it. They
I'm
make
with
irrational
you,
decisions.
but isn't that a bummer? Like we should have like stronger women throughout
I
this.
don't know
And
if I
again, I
want
think that
to.
changes. But
Yes.
yikes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to find one of the art examples too, because we referenced earlier. I think the art is pretty good throughout. One that I'm thinking of that's
Oh
not
no.
great.
Oh no. Here we go.
Hold on. Right there in the corner. Is that a John Byrne baby?
It totally is.
What is happening with the
100%.
proportions here?
Oh boy.
Oh,
All of the
Lord.
kids had like enormous heads, and I was so confused by their ages. Yes.
Um, yeah. I'm trying to think if there were any things that we alluded to that we can now say in spoilers that are important. I mean, yeah, no, I think you really hit it, because the one that comes up really consistently, she's like, half my notes on this page is just like, what's going on with Carol?
I mean, honestly. I
And the
mean,
way
when
Tyrese
sorry.
barely cares about what happens with Carol at the end, which also feels
Yes.
like, what are we doing here?
He was like mad about what she did, and I was like, "Oh no, like this is not good."
Oh, I like this comment.
What?
It's Charlie. Yes, that's what
Yeah.
I'm gonna choose to think that it is. Though a different scene than babies in a bathtub, for sure. Um, oh, Larry, you don't know about the John Byrne babies?
They were
Happy
horrifying.
Halloween. Kristen will share a photo with you later that will scare you for the rest
I
of your
mean,
life.
Dad, you've seen it on a show. Like Jessica and I definitely talked about this, but
Uh, yeah. So for me, that's really what it's so hard to say. I mean, again, earlier we mentioned if you're just now tuning in, which a couple of people I see have joined the chat recently, there's highs, there's lows. I think the lows that we mentioned at the start in the non-spoilery section, we've given enough examples. There are so many though, particularly of the erratic decisions that we
mm,
won't go into. I will say for me, I shared this on the last show. Part of wanting to reread this, and we were both really excited to reread it for same and different reasons. But one of my reasons was like, do I want to keep Compendiums 1 and 3 that I have lugged at 3 different moves? They're very heavy. And I think ultimately, why I keep books is, am I going to reread it pretty regularly, or at least a couple more times, or am I going to lend it out? And while I would recommend this book to people with a caveat for a couple things in this first compendium, I think ultimately I do want to eventually finish this series, but I'm just going to do it from the library. I think that's kind of where I landed with this. I don't see myself rereading it a ton, because the things I super love are really the novelty of it and the ingenuity at the very beginning of this series, which I can just remember. I don't need to reread now that we have other things. So this is kind of where I landed. Yeah.
I intend to keep reading these through to the end because I do want to know how it ends now because I have all four, which I know you only have three.
Keep
And
rubbing it
then,
in.
well, they're so heavy and they take up so much room that I'm going to throw these at Second and Charles when I'm done. And it's going to feel great. Because if I need to read it again, I got Hoopla, I got the library, like, I'm good. I don't need to keep these. So I'm really actually looking forward to, like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep, finish it eventually and then getting rid of them. So.
Larry, is it like, you don't believe me, Larry?
Because it's a big yikes.
It's bad, Larry.
It's not good.
Objectively,
Like it's like a 40-year-old head on a baby body. It's not
It's
good.
we'll pull it up for you. Kristen, are you able to pull up the John Bird babies? Everybody
Uh,
close your eyes though if you're, faint of heart.
I'm gonna try to find it.
Um, and while you do that, I will segue us to Beach Reads, the part of the show where we want to know what you're reading, what you just read this past week, what's kind of like open on your nightstand now. Want to know what's going on with that? We'll talk about what we're currently reading, what we just finished up, and we'll also talk about, oh my gosh, emotional, well, our last homework reading show, because we will have our pizza party show and what we'll be reading for that. So drop in the chat kind of what you're reading.
Can you see
And
this?
okay, so do that one first. Yeah. Do you see this,
Yeah.
Larry? I want you
So
to defend
there's
it. Go ahead,
all I
Larry.
have to do is like Google John Byrne babies. By the way, they come up. Like, what
Mhm.
do we do? What is this?
Now show them
This
in the
one's
bathtub.
yeah.
Want
This
to,
one's creepy too. Yeah. William and Thomas, creepy.
and
What
now
is
we wait for
happening?
Larry's response.
These aren't great either. To be fair, look at who's that?
Look at the
John Byrne can't draw children. Oh boy, Dad, try to defend that. Go ahead.
and now we wait. Yeah. Kristen, what have you just finished reading? What you reading this weekend? What you reading
Um,
next week?
let's see. Well, I want to say Mary's back. Mary, I have to say we didn't really spoil much. I gotta tell you. So just heads up if you want to look at that. But speaking of Mary, Mary and I both need to read this. So I really want to read this very soon. Monstrous, by Sarah Meyer. We've been very interested in it. It looks so good, and I need to get into it. So that is one that's
Hmm.
on my radar from the library. As well as I started and want to finish my one Saturday morning adventures from Disney.
Mm.
And this is peak nostalgia too, right?
Yeah.
It's so fun. I'm having a good time. And I think I showed this on the reading update, my bookmark. I did. We don't have to go through that again.
Okay.
But I'm also reading Girl Made of Stars, which I don't have near me. So I want to also get back into that
And
because
who wrote
I
that?
that would be Ashley Herring Blake.
Oh, are
I don't
you
know
a
if you've
fan?
heard of her. I like her a little bit,
A little bit.
but
And we're going to see her in October when
all
she
right,
comes to
so
Nashville.
excited!
I'm really pumped about that. I'm so glad
I'm
that you saw
so
that.
excited. Yeah, me too.
Nice. Well, I just finished my first Riley Sager, to Mary's dismay.
I'm so excited.
Kristen
So
and
excited.
everyone in the world hyped up, the only one left, and it was great. So naturally, I was like, want to read other Riley Sager.
Hmm.
Turns out everyone in my county also wants to read every Riley Sager. So there's quite a wait list for most of them. But as alluded to earlier, I had a rough week, and so all I wanted to do was escape. So I'll rapid run through what I just kind of read this week because one of them is on your list as well.
Ooh, okay.
And then kind of what I'm currently reading while I just waste time away until Riley Sager becomes available to me. So first thing is Wild Things by Laura Kay. I did show you that I was reading this, blurbed by Ashley Herring Blake.
So I have to read it.
Now this was shelved as a romance, but I want to say the romance is not a huge part of this and also didn't really work for me. It's the one part of the book that didn't really work for me. If you like British humor, this is a good one. It's called Wild Things because it's about this girl who's kind of in a rut and she wants to kind of change things up. So she decides to do one wild thing each month. And the wild thing you kind of see her in the middle of towards the beginning of this book is her roommate, his fiance left him and he had money to buy a house. And so her, some of her friends and him decided to go ahead and just buy that house together and kind of start a little commune in the country. Quite funny. I told Kristen she should read this on audio if possible because I can only imagine you'd laugh out loud. I laughed out loud while reading it in print. Overall, I think I gave it about 4 stars. But yeah, if you like British humor, this is definitely one for you. Then I finished. I knew when Kristen said, I'm going to read this, I was like, I'll read it before Kristen.
I know it's donuts, right? It's so donuts.
It's the do's and donuts of love. Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
you totally won.
This is my third, yeah, Adiba Jayidar, don't know how to say her last name, book. It's my least favorite of her books, but I will say I've always liked her books. She writes a really interesting intersection based on her own person. So she's um, somebody who's a woman of color, who's Muslim, who moved to Ireland as an immigrant. She's also plus size. So she all of her protagonists usually take on most of those intersectionalities, which is just an interesting perspective to have. But this one I was particularly excited for because it takes place on a baking show, and you do know I love that. And
Mhm.
I will say, unlike many a baking and cooking show romances, the show actually plays a massive role in the book. Sometimes that's just a setting they never bring up. So I still think you should check it out, but if you don't love it, I would move on to some of her others because I do think it's the weakest for me personally. And as I teased before, I rapid went through a lot of my mini comics. I'll just mention them quickly because we want to spotlight indie creators. First one I'll just spotlight a little bit more intentionally is the M. Sabine Rear Interiors one. I also read by M. Sabine Rear I Hate Space. I picked these up at Books with Pictures in Portland. And I remember when I teased this, when I picked it up, I said, it looks like there's a character who is blind here. And I wasn't sure if that was based on the writer and illustrator. It is. I would highly recommend Googling her. I'll try to drop the link in the comments if I remember afterwards. She actually has a 15-minute lecture she did where she talks about what it's like to be an illustrator who is blind. She also writes a lot about the importance of it's alt text. What does it stand for? I'm trying to remember right now. The descriptive text.
Yeah.
Um, and what it's like to narrate a comic, because in the sample, she narrates a comic that highlights some of the accessibility pieces. Super interesting and not very long. So I will drop it in the comments. I really liked both of these. I'd like to pick up some more of her stuff. You can buy it digitally for as cheap as $2 online. So definitely support small creators. I also read Leslie and the Wesleys. This was based on a 24-hour comic challenge, which I guess happens every year. I was reading this more in the back. It happens August 7th through 8th. They do it every year. And if you go search for 24hourcomicsday.com, they have a bunch of them. And it's exactly what it sounds like. They create a comic in 24 hours. This was
Mhm.
also pretty cute. I did enjoy it. One I enjoyed less, but still want to shout them out. Until the Day We Die by Yoshi. It just really didn't have enough story to grab me. This was the one where they're soccer players who get stuck in space and only have 24 hours left to live. Just didn't land for me, but might land for you. Loved Song for Medusa, which unfortunately I did not know was only part of a story.
Oh,
But
sad.
definitely this is by why doesn't it say who it's by? Oh, Sarah no, Grace Damaris. And they have a bunch of other work on their Etsy store as well. But this was really good and a kind of subversion on the Greek story of Medusa. And I reread Wayne Family Adventures because you can now buy it in print. And if you have it already and you want joy in your life, I was depressed this week, but I read this and it turned my mood around at least 30%.
Love that.
So I did want to talk about what I had just read. Is there anything you're getting ready to read that you didn't want that you wanted to spotlight?
Um, well, I actually started this audiobook, but I'm barely in it. Of course, it's Riley Sager.
And in
Before done.
6 weeks, I will start that audio.
I am going through them right now. I finished Lock Every Door, which I really liked. Let's see. I know there's stuff around me that I want to get to, but it's kind of like I say to you. I'm like, am I going to read the Do's and Donuts of Love? I keep saying I want
No,
to. Am I
you
going
do
to?
not.
I keep mentioning this book too. That's in front of me. A Story of Seven Lives. I need to read this. This has me written all over it. Look at this
It
guy.
does. Oh, look, it says Kristen and really small. It
Oh
even
my
has the
god.
A. It really has
It's
TAN at the end. It was just for you.
I mean, look at this. Come on. I need to read it. Also, every week, people in the chat are like, "Hey, where are the cat comics? What's happening?" And so I'm like, I need to get
Wow.
back with
She's
it.
rebranding.
So it's sad.
She's in her Riley Sager era,
I
and next
just
she'll be
can't
in
stop.
her cat comics era. Yeah.
Cat book cycle. That cat book is sad. Elon, what do you mean? Am I gonna cry?
Elon, if there are deaths, you will need to inform her in a private chat. Thank you so much.
I'm so upset already.
Yeah, boy, Riley Sager. What if he started putting that on his books? Sorry.
I'm gonna add him. Should I not read this? I'm so upset now.
Well, wait. We'll see if you should read it.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy. Upcoming for me, a couple things. Yeah, I told you I didn't read the second compendium, so I made up for it somewhere else.
Oh.
I heard about this guy, and I've read some of his stuff, and it's all
Yeah.
been great. But like, I heard
Wow.
this new one came out. I didn't have to wait 5 weeks. I just
Yeah.
supported him directly as a small creator. Have you heard of this guy, Reed
I
Chancellor?
I was gonna say, how do you say his last name? Okay.
Chancellor,
Chancellor. I've heard
Ride
of that guy.
Chancellor. You heard of him?
Ride Chancellor.
Yes.
Hey,
All.
does that book feel nice? How's that
Oh,
book feel?
nice.
Great.
Let me show you some interior art.
Please.
You gotta. I don't know if anyone's never seen this guy. You should be picking it up.
Check him out.
Wow. But I've
Wow.
read all of Reed's other books and I like them all and love them all for different reasons. And I've had this since it came out and I haven't gotten a chance to read it, but I was like, I'm going to read it in the summer because summer vacation's about school teachers on their
Hey.
summer vacation in a rock band. That's all I know so far. And the kids went back to school in our county this past week and I still hadn't read it. So I was like, I'm reading this today. So beginning to that today. Now, Reed Chancellor also talked about this book on his famous YouTube channel, The Comic Slayer, with his wife. I'm done with the bit.
I love it.
But when I was in PALS, I saw American Cults, which is a graphic history of religious cults in America from the colonial era to today. And I requested it from the library. There was a hold. That was weeks ago. It has now arrived. And I know you and Reed picked it up at your Columbus trip, I think? Or
Yeah.
no? Yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
believe at a half price. Yeah.
yeah, so really excited. French flaps, love that. I did get to start it a little bit, but my intention is to finish it soon. Just 2 more books. First one, it came in the mail. Volume 3 of Wind. Let's go. Let's
Nice.
go. Let's
Nice.
go.
Let's go.
We
I
only
need
get
to read
5
that
issues a
too.
year, but they
I
are
need
a
to read it too.
treat when they
Yeah.
come.
Absolutely.
I've read 1 and 2. I love 1, 5-star read. 2, I think I gave like 4. I didn't love it quite as much. I'm hoping this falls in the middle.
Yeah.
But I really have to reread all of them because I don't remember enough. So if you have not checked out Winds, do it. They're
Do it.
cheap, they're beautiful, they're an engaging fantasy story. Yeah. Were you gonna say something? Sorry, I think I cut you off a little bit.
No, other than I need to read that too. Is mine near me? No.
You get the
No.
hardcovers, don't you?
I do. They're just so cute.
And the last thing, if Kristen saw my email, which I don't know if she did or not,
I totally did.
I'm going to be reading this in the winter of 2024.
Same.
There's only a couple days left. Mark Bell, one of our viewers for the summer reading program, has barely promoted on his own. And I was like, Mark, you need to promote it more because I love it the second I looked it up. His Kickstarter for his new 32-page full-color supernatural adventure comic about Agatha, a rookie park ranger responsible for a mysterious forest full of inexplicable creatures who has to overcome self-doubt and forces beyond her control to find a lost child, enter the magical world of Dusk River Park. And I think Mark's Kickstarter has multiple levels, including a $5 digital level. That's a cup of coffee. But look, I've included some of the interior art here, and some of the levels include digital and print of some of his older work, which honestly, some of it I'm even more excited about than Strange Ranger to check out. So I think it ends on Wednesday. But yes, thank you, James, for putting in the chat. And then I'll put in the comments later the link to the Kickstarter. Mark's been such a great viewer for the show this summer, and I regret not looking up his stuff earlier. It looks wonderful. So if you want to support a small creator, And fellow viewer, please take a moment to check out that Kickstarter.
Absolutely. It looks great. The physical level starts at $10, by the way. That's the one I backed. So I'm very excited to get that for sure.
Did anyone put what they? Oh, Freddy's on his Usagi Yojimbo saga
Yeah.
continues.
Also, this was my dad's reaction to the John Byrne babies. Come on, Dad. The context is they're babies and not 40-year-olds.
Okay, Larry, put in the chat what context would make sense for those babies to look like that?
Honestly, that's great. Great question. See, Elon's reading up to book 6 of Vinland Saga. Finished
Vinland
all of Batman
Saga.
One Bad Day.
Have you read it, Kristen? Because I
I've read
want
the
to read that one.
first volume and I really liked it. It was
Okay.
many years ago. I need to
Okay.
keep going. So,
Yeah.
and I have several of them.
Okay, I want to pick that up at the same time as you so we can talk about it now that I'm okay with reading manga.
Oh, please. I would love
Mhm.
that. Let's see. Cycle says I have warm television next up on my read pile. My dad's reading the Immortal Iron Fist Omni.
I low key love Iron Fist. I know he's
Yeah.
not popular because of how the show went, but I love especially the Power Man Iron Fist stuff from like the 70s and 80s. I'm kind of into it.
Love that. Currently reading Thor: God of Thunder by Jason Aaron.
So good.
Let's see. There's a lot of back and forth I'm trying to get through here. Okay. In reference to the Kappa being Sayada, it's called Seven Lives of Cats. I mean, it's called A Story of Seven Lives, but I just thought it was about these 7 cats. It doesn't say and deaths.
Is this like we watch them die 7 times and then they don't come back like Binks? Like what's going on?
I'm gonna cry. Like, I'm really gonna cry.
You got to
You're
look
not
at the
saying anything.
spoilers, I think.
I don't know. I feel like you need to tell me if they die. So I'm gonna be upset.
You do have to properly warn Kristen.
Yeah, please. Yeah, there's Freddy getting through Usagi. I need to do that too. Yeah, Red Chancelot. Bruce reads first and last name and he becomes a politician from the Star Wars universe. Love that. Yeah, why is that Mark here? So I want to know if he's a fan of We Bear Bears. I don't know. He's busy. I mean, I hope your head feels better, Cycle. If there's something weird with the baby characters displaying the faces, there's not. They're just babies. They're just supposed to be babies.
There's no explanation.
There's no context. Currently reading Mr. Cato Plays Family, Superman Space Age, and What Remains by Wendy Walker.
I'm so excited for when Mary finishes Superman Space Age. I'm tracking her progress on Goodreads. Then we will chat.
My dad liked the Iron Fist Netflix show.
To each their own.
Kirkman's Firepower feels like Iron Fist and Shang-Chi. Totally your jam then, Jessica.
I'll have to look it up. Well, someone mentioned Star Wars.
Yes, they did. I'm just throwing around my board here. Sorry. It fell. Which, by the way, what is the next on the board? Let's see. We have, of course, Attack of the Clones, the novelization that we will be reading for next time.
Yep.
I was going to say, is yours near you?
For once, I did.
Nice.
Also, I'm sorry for my audio, although it's not my fault. Mary also had troubles. I'm so sorry. I see
So you're
people
saying
are
it's
struggling.
me?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's not me.
According to my dad, it's StreamYard. So I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I apologize. I can't do anything about it. We've tried fixing it. But yeah, we're reading the Attack of the Clones novelization and Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. And not to brag or anything, but somebody has a signed copy.
Did you meet her or?
I didn't.
Okay.
My friend Kelly goes every Star Wars celebration and got my copy signed for me.
Very
This
nice.
is to this day my favorite Star Wars book.
Wow.
But it also was my first one that wasn't like an adaptation of one of the movies. So I'm pretty excited because I don't think you've read any that are not their original
Yeah,
story. So I'm really excited to see how you feel about it.
I'm excited too.
So we'll be doing that in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And then right after, we're of course going to have our celebration of the end of the summer reading program.
We are. And we've got some games. If you just joined in the chat, one thing we were asking people to do earlier is just nominate one of your favorite 90s characters or a favorite 90s character. You can do it in the chat, you can do it in the comments. We're going to take those and play a little game with them on our finale show.
Yep. So please leave comments. We want to know your favorite 90s characters. We're going to have a good time with it. I promise. You're going to love it. Can I promise
And
that? I don't know.
no,
But
you really can't. You really can't. This is the internet.
that's true.
But yes, it'll be our last show with homework reading. So lots of time to read one or both of those. Listen, I'll let you pick whether you want Lost Stars or Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
But if you've watched the Attack of the Clones movie, I don't think you'll be spoiled at all for that. But yeah, we're excited about that. And we certainly appreciate everyone's time tuning in today, despite the audio woes
Yeah.
on a Sunday.
Sorry about that, everybody. But again, please leave your comments with your favorite characters. And thank you for joining.
Yeah, have a good Sunday.